Isn't it fascinating how we make sense of art?
Definitely.
Especially now. I mean, we're just swimming in images constantly, every day.
Right. Online, everywhere.
It makes you stop and think, what is art, really? Is it the person who made it? Their idea?
Or is it more about us, the
Yeah.
people looking at it, what we bring?
Exactly. And that's kind of the core question, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going to really dig into that whole dynamic, the creation part, how we perceive it, and even this idea of cameraless photos. It's quite intriguing.
Absolutely. And the material you shared is so varied. You've got exhibition reviews
Artists' journals.
and these thoughts on how the public, actually engages with art.
That mix, I think, gives us a richer perspective, right?
Definitely a more complete picture.
Okay, so let's jump in. That idea you mentioned, the cameraless photo, that really caught my eye.
Yeah, it's such a cool place to start, isn't it? Because traditionally, you think, okay, a photogram.
Right, objects on paper, exposed to light, simple enough.
But then one source mentioned Robert Heineken, his photographism, using magazine scraps.
Yeah, collaging them. So still no camera in the conventional sense, already pushing it.
And how does that connect to that recent exhibition you flagged, the one with the Polaroids?
Ah, yes. That was fascinating. They showed Polaroids, but flipped over.
So you couldn't see the picture?
Nope. Just the back
Yeah.
with writing on it, descriptions, notes, whatever.
So the idea is you read the words and the image forms in your head.
Precisely. Your imagination does the work.
Wow. It's like the description is the photograph, in
Right.
a way.
Kind of, yeah. And you can't help but think about AI image generation now, can you?
Oh, totally. Text prompts creating pictures.
It's a similar process, text to image, but the big difference is who or, what is doing the imagining.
Right. With the Polaroids, it's your brain, your memories, your associations.
Your mind is the lens in the darkroom, all in one go.
Whereas with AI, it's an algorithm. Different kind of seeing.
Exactly. And then there was also that photos taken on a weekend project in the sources. Another take on the photographic idea, maybe focusing more on the feeling of a weekend or the potential of it, rather than just a literal snapshot.
It really makes you question what a photograph fundamentally is, doesn't it?
It does, which leads us nicely to Polaroids themselves. They kept popping up in your sources.
They did. There was a whole show focused on them, apparently.
Yes, but not just, showing nice Polaroid pictures. It was that idea again, the flipped ones with writing.
That concept really seemed to stick with the author.
It did, because it's that shift, isn't it, from the visual thing itself.
To the text that makes you imagine a visual thing.
The words almost become the artwork, prompting your imagination.
It's like the caption isn't just describing a photo that exists.
Right. It's kind of creating a new photo, but inside your head.
And that parallel with AI generating images from text, that's really sharp.
It's that same core process. Text input, visual output, just a different mechanism.
It wasn't just the flipped ones, remember? There was that other mention, a show called Photos Taken on a Weekend.
Ah, right. Again, the description, the title, takes center stage. It echoes that cameraless idea where the story or the suggestion is the main thing.
So it really pushes that question. If you take away the explicit picture, where's the art? Is it the object or the experience it triggers?
And this is where Keith Haring's perspective, which you found in his journals, becomes so relevant.
Oh, Haring had such definite ideas about this. He was really strong on the viewer creating the reality.
Get meaning, the whole concept of the art.
Yeah, he almost saw the artist as just a facilitator, a middleman.
That's the word he used, yeah. And what's really compelling is his focus on accessibility.
He wanted art for everyone. No
Yeah.
gatekeeping.
Exactly. No fixed meaning dictated by the artist. It was all about the individual viewer's take. For Haring, the artist just provides the spark, right?
Right, and the viewer's experience is the actual fire, the meaning.
He was even worried, wasn't he, that artists might be pushing people away?
Yeah, making art that felt too complex, too.
Yeah.
Impenetrable. He worried people were afraid to voice opinions.
Afraid of sounding silly or uninformed.
Yeah, exactly. Which is quite insightful, I think. He felt artists should make people feel welcome as viewers.
It's interesting, too, how he contrasted the public's reaction to his street art.
Which was generally positive,
Yep.
right, in everyday places.
Compared to the art world, which can be more critical. Context matters, again.
Definitely. Though he did admit that most people probably saw his work on, like, T-shirts and posters first.
Yeah, the commercial reproductions. Which, of course, shapes perception, too.
But this idea of the viewer completing the work, it wasn't just hearing, was it?
No, not at all. Marcel Duchamp famously said something very similar. that the spectator completes the creative act through their interpretation.
So the viewer isn't passive, they're actively involved in making meaning.
Exactly. And Roy Ascott pushes that even further. He suggested artworks are like triggers for experiences.
It's not just about looking at an object.
It's about what happens inside you, the internal reaction.
So the value isn't inherent in the thing itself necessarily, it's subjective.
Pretty much. What makes art good, from this angle, happens inside the viewer. It resonates with your history, your culture, everything.
And Herring called viewers artists in their own interpretation.
Yeah, because art has infinite meanings defined by each individual.
He just wanted people to respond, didn't he? Not necessarily get it in some final, correct way.
Right. Which takes us back to context, how important where and when you see art is.
One source mentioned people seeing art on warm, sunny afternoons.
Yeah, casually, maybe not even in a gallery.
Which is so different from the typical museum experience, right? They can feel rushed.
Totally. You're trying to see everything, get your money's worth.
Yeah.
Maybe just glance at the label and move on. Not deep engagement.
But then think about framing and curation, how that changes things.
Oh, massively. Like, take photojournalism, put it in a nice frame in a quiet gallery.
And suddenly it's perceived as art with a capital A. The context elevates it.
The frame itself is like an instruction. Look closely, this is important.
And that anecdote about Ellsworth Kelly being inspired by a museum window.
Huh, yeah. Focusing on something everyone else just walks past.
It shows how artists themselves find inspiration in unexpected places.
And of course, the curator has huge influence. They choose what you see, how it's arranged, what the little text panel says. They shape the context.
So with all this focus on individual interpretation and context, it seems, well, almost pointless to try and pin down one single correct response to art.
That's not the aim. The point is to create these spaces for imagination to ignite.
And where it goes from there, that's up to the individual.
Right. Trying to standardize it would miss the point entirely.
There was that quote you found from Morse Peckham about art being exposure to a false world to help us deal with the real world.
Yes, I thought that was powerful. Art as a sort of safe training ground for difficult feelings or ideas.
A practice zone.
Kind of. But it also highlights how viewers bring their own filters, their biases.
You might focus on one thing and miss something else entirely just because of what you expect or what you know.
Like missing the color or composition because you're focused on something else.
And that idea that culture wires us with certain ideas of beauty or art.
So we might just dismiss something unfamiliar straight away. That's not art.
It doesn't fit the template we have in our heads.
Exactly. And with abstract art especially, people often want it to look like something recognizable.
That urge to find a familiar shape.
When any resemblance might just be accidental, purely subjective.
That Polish art made of typed lines, that really stood out.
It did, didn't it? Because first you think painting, then wait, it's text.
It forces you to shift gears, to think about what art even can be.
Yeah.
Beyond just paint on canvas.
It moves right into conceptual territory. So let's circle back to Herring again. Artist's intent versus viewer perception.
He was pretty clear, wasn't he, that his original idea wasn't the most important thing.
No, what mattered was the viewer's experience, what they took away.
Which ties into that critique from Dubuffet about Western ideas of beauty.
Right, the idea that our narrow definition of beauty can actually blind us to other kinds of art. Herring was influenced by that.
It's like we put on these cultural blinkers when we look at stuff.
We do, based on what we've learned, what we expect. And Walter Isaacson made that interesting point about artists moving on.
Oh yeah, that the artist finishes the work and is already thinking about the next thing.
While the audience is still engaging with it, still finding new things in it.
It's like different timelines of interaction. Makes sense.
The creation process ends, but the viewing process can continue indefinitely.
Which leads to thinking about how we view art now. The sources mention screens, obviously.
It's unavoidable. Scrolling through Instagram, museum, websites.
It's just fundamentally different from being in the room with a painting or sculpture, isn't it?
Completely. You lose the scale, the texture, the physical presence. It changes the whole relationship.
Okay, so maybe let's broaden out from the individual viewer to public perception more generally. Brian Eno's diary had some thoughts on this.
Yeah, he made that point about attention creating value. And that public criticism isn't always negative.
Sometimes it's just genuine questions being asked.
Right. And he noticed that the value of art seems more negotiable now, less fixed, more up for discussion.
It seems like, generally speaking, the public connects with art, where they can see the skill, the craft.
and feel some emotion. And color seems important too,
Yeah, something tangible, maybe. Something visually engaging.
which might explain why installations that need a lot of explanation can be tricky.
If the meaning isn't obvious, people might feel shut out. Or like they're missing the point.
Possibly. And then there's that classic complaint about public art. It's a waste of money.
I always hear that one. But then you get things like The Bean in Chicago, Cloudgate.
Or Crown Fountain. Pieces the public really took to, found their own ways to interact with, unexpectedly popular.
It suggests maybe the public can embrace unusual ideas sometimes. And maybe there's even a leaning towards big, abstract, public stuff.
Could be. It's also interesting that potential gap, artists seeing art as inner exploration,
While the public might see it more as entertainment or decoration.
different functions perhaps. And in museums, people tend to gravitate towards what they already know, right?
The familiar names, the familiar styles. Makes sense.
Then you have Gore Vidal's rather bleak take.
Oh yeah, the American public's emotions are easily played on.
A sobering thought when you think about art's impact or how it's used.
Definitely. And yet, within the arts world, there's often that desire for public validation,
True. That feeling of connection when people see and appreciate the work.
which maybe connects to the whole social media thing. Sharing inspirational moments instantly.
That immediate public feedback loop. Sharing the art encounter itself.
Okay, so let's really dive into one specific piece that pushes all these buttons. Rauschenberg's erased de Kooning drawing. It's pretty much a blank piece of paper. And the story is, Rauschenberg spent ages erasing a drawing by Willem de Kooning back in '53.
Exactly. It came after his all-white paintings. He was playing with this idea. Can erasing art create new art?
He tried erasing his own stuff first.
Yeah, but felt it didn't have enough weight. He needed to erase something already established, already recognized as art.
So he actually went to de Kooning, who was like the big abstract expressionist painter then, and asked him for a drawing to erase the nerve.
Incredible audacity, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And de Kooning, apparently understanding the whole conceptual game.
You didn't just give him any old sketch.
Yeah. No. He deliberately chose a drawing that was really densely worked. Lots of charcoal, pencil, crayon. Made it super difficult to erase.
So it took Rauschenberg, what, over a month?
Yeah, a month, maybe more, lots of different erasers. Painstaking work.
And the frame is key, isn't it? The gilded frame and the little inscription Jasper Johns added.
Absolutely integral. Erased de Kooning drawing, Robert Rauschenberg, 1953. It gives it that museum artifact quality, that official status. Even the dimensions are part of its identity.
And predictably, it caused a stir.
Oh, yeah. Huge debate. Was it a brilliant conceptual statement, neo-dada commentary?
Or just vandalism.
Some called it that, but the crucial factor is de Kooning agreed. He consented.
Without that permission, it's a whole different story.
Completely different. And you have to think about Rauschenberg's relationship with those abstract expressionists. He knew them, drank with them at the Cedar Tavern.
Right. And some of his other works from around then, like the tire print or the Factum paintings.
Exactly. They seem to be engaging with, maybe even questioning, the whole Abex ethos of spontaneous genius.
Like Factum 2, meticulously copying his own supposedly spontaneous painting. It messes with that idea of unique expression, doesn't it?
It does. And the detail that de Kooning specifically gave him a drawing he would miss
Adds another layer, right? It wasn't just a throwaway piece.
suggests a complex artistic dialogue. Maybe respect, maybe challenge, maybe both. And years later, in 2010, technology allowed them to see faint traces.
What did they find?
Figures. Hints of figures in the original de Kooning drawing, hidden beneath the erasure.
Wow. So the ghost of the original is still sort of there.
Exactly. It makes you really grapple with what a work of art is. The object, the idea, the act, the viewer's engagement with the concept.
So, wrapping this all up, it really feels like the main takeaway from your sources is just how deeply personal the art experience is.
Yeah, it's shaped by us, by our perspectives, by the context.
And even by our imagination filling in blanks, like with those Polaroids or the erased drawing.
The meaning isn't this fixed thing sitting in the artwork. It happens in the interaction between the work, or even just the idea of the work, and the viewer. And when you think about pieces like the erased de Kooning or that Polaroid show with just the writing, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
About what?
Well, does absence or suggestion have as much artistic weight as, making something traditionally, as putting paint on canvas? What does it say about where the boundaries of art are heading? Maybe what isn't shown is becoming just as potent as what is.